So thank you, Paul. So Paul and I are here to represent the psychology department, but we are really happy we have Fiona here, who is going to talk to us a little bit about the placements. And Fiona, I know you've got another meeting coming up soon, so would you like to go first and to maybe talk to the students a little bit about the placements? Have you got some slides, Fiona? Or
I do, yes, I do. I don't probably need them very much, but it's probably worth having a backdrop. You should
be able to share screen. I've enabled everybody.
Okay, lovely.
Everyone can share slides if they have them. There we go. Thanks, Fiona. I'm going to hand over to you now, Fiona. Thank you so much.
So, how long have I got, Paula?
How do you want 15, 20 minutes? 15?
Oh, I could definitely do it in a lot less. I'd planned for around about 5. So
great.
You probably want to focus on your student talks.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so let's get into it then. So my name's Fiona Gibson. I'm an employability and student mobility officer with the school. So I'm here in A129 in the college building at the moment. That's where we normally live, although most of the time we are working from home. So I'm going to tell you about our work placements program today. And for those of you who came to our session in term 1 last year, or well, this year, but earlier this year, you will have heard some of this before, but it's just a really nice refresher for you because if you're thinking about doing a work placement, you will need to know some of this information. So let's get into today. So we're going to talk about what support is available for you in terms of getting a work placement. I'm going to tell you what a sandwich year is if you're not sure at this point, why you should do a work placement, where to find one, and what the eligibility criteria is for those, because I know some of you have been emailing me about this and wanting to know what the eligibility criteria is. So I'll tell you where you can find that information. And then what to do now. So some of you will want to walk away with some actions from today if you haven't started already, and I'm going to finish up that for you. So the support. So it's our team. So the employability and student mobility team. So that's me and my colleague Eleanor Hannon. She's the manager of the team. Some of you may have met Roma before. She's on maternity leave at the moment, so you won't be able to see her. But myself and Eleanor can definitely help you if you have any inquiries about this program. This is our email address. All of the inquiries about work placements come into this email address. Just makes it nice and easy for us to keep everything in one place. And if one of us is off one day or another, then someone else can pick up where we've left off. You may also have met the lovely Antonia Clark. She is our careers consultant for psychology students, and this is her area of expertise. And so if you're wondering about career direction for your work placement or beyond, she is the person to speak to in careers, and you book in with her for appointments in Careers Hub. Oops, do you know what I've done? I've clicked on a link to an email address. That's great. My email's going to open now. So what is a sandwich year? So some of you may already know this. This is where we add an additional year of study to your degree program and you get a year's worth of work experience. So after you've completed year 2, you go out on a sandwich year. And then when you've completed that year, you come back and you do year 4, which is actually level 3 of your degree. So you get to take a whole year out. And then you come back and you finish your degree, and hopefully by the end of that time, you've got a really nice idea about the direction you'd like to take for your degree or your future. So why should you do one of our work placements? Well, you get to enhance your skill set. This is one of the huge benefits of our program. You're actually going out into the workforce for 9 to 12 months, and that's going to build some skills for you, both in the workplace itself and also some nice transferable skills, some things like teamwork and skills like that. You're going to get a much broader and more deep idea of the industry that you're going into. And so you might decide at the end of that year that actually this isn't for you, and that's really good data for you. So this year is actually a really nice experience for you to go out and road test a career. Road test a career path. Yes or no. You might decide you love the career that you've chosen for your work placement and this is absolutely the direction you want to go in, but it also might not be. And that's really good to know, because when you come back and you complete year 3, you'll know that your learning path in year 3 might change. And that's good to know before you've finished your degree. So obviously, work experience enhances your job prospects. You will get to develop yourself personally. And we see this year after year, that students come back from their placement or even their exchange program, which is another program that we offer as a sandwich year in the school. And they come back transformed. And the reason this is because they've had to be resilient, they've had to build independence, they've had to think on their feet. And this is a really, really good set of skills to build, not just for the year out, but for your life in general. You get to experience what it's like working full time, and you might decide that actually you quite like studying because it's not full time a lot of the time, at least face to face, but you might love it as well. Some students really, really thrive when they go out and work full time. You'll get to develop your network. This is one of the most important things that you can do when you go out and work, and people sometimes don't realise how important this is because you're connecting with other people in your industry and they know things, and you can talk to them about, you know, a direction that you might like to go in if you're, say, collecting data about your future career direction, things like that. It's really good to know people, and they might know about jobs as well that you could apply for. You will get better academic results when you get back. Now, this is something we see year after year as well. Students who go out in our programs become more mature, they're more resilient, they're more focused because they've got a really clear idea about what it's like working in the workforce, and they know what they're aiming for when they finish year 3. So we do see better results. And also you get to take a break from study and actually be an adult for a while. You know, it's a little bit of a different environment to coming to university every day. So it's quite nice to think of it as a break as well. And of course, if you get a paid placement, you can make some money, which is great. So there's 4 main sources that you will find work placements in, and I'll go over them a little bit today. So the first one is via email and LinkedIn. So we get contacted by a range of organisations, and they are particularly of interest to psychology students. And also we post these on our LinkedIn group, and we also will email them out to you. So keep an eye on those LinkedIn groups, and also on your email. We'll often put work placement opportunity in the subject line when we're sending them out to you. And we will often be in quite close contact with these organisations about their recruitment process. So feel free to ask us things about that recruitment. If you see these emails come in, we might have more information for you. The next one, job boards online. I'm sure you all know about LinkedIn Jobs, Indeed. There's a couple that are a little bit more specialised for students. There's Rate My Placement and Prospects, as well as Total Jobs. Now, there are others as well that you might have seen. And these are for the kinds of roles that are a little bit more corporate focused. So if you're thinking about an NHS focused role, you probably won't see those advertised on these websites. You're more likely to see these roles come in via email, via us. And if you are searching for placements online, what you want to do is look for things like industrial placement, internship, work placement, or sandwich year when you're doing a search. Just make sure if you've found an internship, that it's not a graduate internship. So you want to see some key things like student is currently studying in their penultimate year, and you know that's a work placement for somebody who's going to be joining on our program. And of course, contacting organisations directly. This takes a little bit of guts to do, but you might decide that you want to work for a particular organisation. You find their website, you find their contact email, and you email them directly. And we can help you put an email together if you'd like to do this. It's a very good way of creating opportunities for yourself, because these organisations often don't have the resources to advertise. So they're not on LinkedIn, you won't find them through Google. They're there, but they may not have the money. So reaching out to them directly will reduce the competition for these kinds of placements, and you might be able to create something for yourself that's really, really fantastic learning experience for the year. So the eligibility criteria, what you should look for, because I get lots of comments about this. So it needs to be a minimum of 9 months. We prefer 10 to 12 months, but for roles that are unpaid, and they're often unpaid in psychology, we're not going to make you do 10 to 12 months. We allow a certain amount of flexibility for these. So you just need to get in touch with us if you found a work placement and you're wondering whether this fits within this eligibility criteria. It also needs to be a minimum of 1,200 hours over the duration of the placement. And that's quite easy to do if you're working full-time. So there's the standard full-time hours for us in most cases. If you're wondering about any of this, just send us an email and ask, because it's definitely worth finding out before you jump in. And students who are in their penultimate year, that means they're currently studying in year 2, that's you. That's what you should be looking for in a work placement. And in most cases, we want them to be paying you at least the UK minimum wage, but we do understand that sometimes this isn't possible. And ultimately, we'll leave it up to you to make that decision as to whether you would like to do that work placement. So what to do now? So when you walk away from today, if you haven't already, I'd like you to put a CV together, book into a CV check appointment in Careers Hub, and start doing some research on work placements. And this means start looking at some of those job boards or some of the emails that we've been sending to you about work placement opportunities. You can read through the SAS Placements Moodle. That's a really good place to start if you want more detailed information about this program. And start setting up some profiles on these job boards, just so that you can get notified when these jobs come out. If you know you're looking for something specific, you want to know as soon as they come out, because sometimes these organisations, they have a very short window for you to apply, and you want to make sure you've got as much time for preparation as possible so that you can get your application checked, get your CV checked, and get that in by the deadline. So this is the end of my presentation. I hope it was a nice little overview for you. Just remember, we're always at the end of the email if you've got any questions about the program or anything to do with work placements. So get in touch, and yes, I'll hand over to the next person.
Gosh, Fiona, thank you so much. That's fantastic. Really fantastic. I'm just going to ask the students if anyone has any questions for Fiona. If you're feeling a bit shy, you could pop your question in the chat if you wanted to. So I'll just see if anybody has anything they want to. That was so fantastic, Fiona. And I was just, while you were talking, I was thinking about some of the placement visits Paula and I have done actually already in January, and thinking about some of these skills that students on placement have been developing. I think it's Paula and I both noticed just how amazing the students sort of really flourish and blossom on a placement and really come into their own in terms of confidence. But also, yeah, as someone who teaches third-year students, students often say, I notice when they come back, they're more organized in their work because they've had to be organized in the workplace. So that just really resonated with me when you were talking about that. So we do have a question.
Oh, good. Is it student finance related?
No.
You normally get student finance questions.
It's a great question.
I can't answer them.
Should I, the question is, should I be panicking about placements in my first year?
Absolutely not. Don't panic in your first year about anything. If you're in year 1, you should be focused on getting some work experience. And that might mean that you try and get a summer, like an insight program. What do they call them? Spring weeks. You can find them online to apply for. You might like to do some volunteering. And City has its own volunteering area with lots of very heavily scrutinised organisations. So you know that they're good organisations that you can apply for, that will give you some experience that you can then have on your CV and have some something to talk about when you go for your interview for a work placement. So that's really getting some of those experiences under your belt during year 1. That should be your primary focus. So don't stress right now, but definitely start, because what happens is time gets away. don't wait till term 1 of year 2 if you can possibly help it, because the workload of your studies is quite demanding.
Yeah.
And you want to have it all done and dusted by the end of year 2. And it's just, I've seen so many students put themselves under so much pressure to get a work placement, and they do. But wouldn't it be nice if you could be a little bit more relaxed about it?
Can I just ask Fiona, on behalf of the students, I'm sure this is a question they'd love to hear answered. I'm thinking as well for first year students about volunteering roles. I am someone who probably started out when I was a student in volunteering roles, which are often underrated because they're not paid. But I have to say the work experience and the value is phenomenal. It's still work experience. Would your team help students if they as well with CVs and advice around volunteering roles? Is that something they can access from your team?
We can't give you, so we can give you limited help with that. So the best thing to do if you're interested in volunteering roles is to sign up at volunteering.city.ac.uk. So you can set up a profile there, and they've got lots of jobs available on that site. And you can just choose them and apply for them directly through there. Careers Hub is the place to go for CVs. So that's where you've got all your resources. You've got a template for a CV, you put that together, and you can get that checked. You can book into a CV check appointment if you want to and have a chat. If you're not sure what you'd like to go into, having a career planning or a career advice appointment with one of our careers consultants is a really useful thing to do, because then you can sort of focus rather than thinking, oh, there's too many choices, because psychology students can do literally anything for a career. And so what you want to do is be quite focused in the way that you approach this, because no matter what you do, you will be building transferable skills and you'll be getting experience in the workplace, and nothing is wasted. So even if you change careers entirely, that little piece of volunteering you did in a social care charity in year 1 is going to be a fantastic place to start. So we can give you general guidance, but I think our careers team is the best place to go for that.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's just good to know for us as well, because students often ask, questions about everything, and it's just good for us to know. So another question from the same student: how do I get references? I recently aced an interview for working with young offenders, but I need references and don't know how to get them. So again, would that be the careers team or?
So it's my understanding that this is something that personal tutors can do. That's what I've always been told. I'm not sure if you know more about that.
I get, well, I do say to students who often don't come along to my personal tutor meetings, it will make it difficult for me to write a reference if I don't know you. So I think it's important for students to remember a personal tutor is there for pastoral care and, signposting and checking in, but we need to know you to do a good reference as well. So I think that's always important to remember. But some jobs, I guess, students need 2 references and we can only do 1. I think academically it's good to try to get to know other academics in the department. Often for a 3rd year student, that might be their dissertation supervisor, who you have a very close relationship with. I guess that's where volunteering also, comes in to play, because you actually, one of the biggest bonuses beyond work experience in the volunteering sector is often the reference as well, plus training. A lot of volunteering roles involve training for the volunteers. Actually, it's probably fundamental to the role. So training, work experience, and a reference are also the bonuses for actually doing volunteering work. I see Mr. Flaxman has patiently been waiting with his hand up. Paul, come in.
Yeah, just a question that came directly to me in the chat is a good one, I think, which is, would it be ideal to do a placement part-time whilst in the third year, or to take the full sandwich year? And I wondered if that related to volunteer work, because I guess taking a part-time placement in the third year is more like volunteer work, whereas taking the sandwich year, you're more integrated with a team, you're more involved, you're like an employee.
Yeah,
is my thinking on it. But I just, I wondered if you had any thoughts about that, Fiona.
Yeah, I would definitely prefer the sandwich year, because you can always do part-time volunteering work in any year of study and have it fit around your studies. But having a solid year of work experience, you're much more integrated into the workplace, the routines. You're getting consistent one-on-ones, line management. It's quite a different way of operating, and it's something you need experience in, just the doing the work full time. So yeah, I would prefer to see someone get a work placement. Ultimately, it's up to you, but you've got this fantastic opportunity to get an additional year on your transcript when you graduate, which will actually set you apart from other students. So you think about it, you've got however many thousand people graduating every year from a psychology degree, and you're potentially competing with them for jobs. And the person that has the year of work experience is going to have that edge over someone that doesn't. Even if you've got the work experience in your third year, having that extra year and having that extra credential of saying I've done a sandwich year program for work placement, it's going to give you that little bit of a bump.
Totally agree. And can I just say academically as well, third year students, you need to be careful how much you work in your third year, because it's quite a busy year. You've got your final elective modules, but you've also got your dissertation, which is a big piece of work, and it runs from October to June, or to April, sorry. And actually, when a student takes on too much work in their third year, their academic study can suffer. And I've seen that myself, whether it's paid work that you have yourself, or whether it even was a placement or volunteering. So I think you have to be careful to get that balance right. If you're doing work experience while studying, you have to keep that balance. Whereas on the sandwich year, you don't have to think about coursework during that year. You can focus 100% on the job and actually enjoy it, and not be worrying about deadlines and essays. And so I would say to students to be careful in their third year. Work experience is important, but you have to keep that balance, I think, between studying and actually working. So let's just see. So any other questions for Fiona before? I think your next meeting's at 5:30. Is that right, Fiona?
Yeah. So final question. You can always email us if you've got further questions.
And or you can email myself and Paul, and we can pass the question on. I'm thinking you might like a little 2-minute break before your next meeting, Fiona. So
I mean, that'd be nice.
Yeah.
But I am happy to answer a question too.
I think the chat is quiet, so I think everyone's happy. So can we all do a nice Zoom applause for Fiona, please?
Put your hands in the air.
Put your hands in the air, and let's show our real appreciation. Thank you so much, Fiona. And
thank you, everyone.
So it's always good for myself and Paul to have that recap as well. But thank you. That was fantastic. And if any questions come our way. Oh, we might have one question.
Yeah.
Hi, and have you got your hand up, or are you clapping? It might be 5, I'm not sure. Was there one more? No, it's disappeared. So it might have been a high 5. No.
Maybe.
Yeah, which is great. Thank you, Fiona. Really appreciate your time. And obviously,
thank you very much.
If anything comes through, Paul and I also will pass on details.
Yeah, and I'll send out the presentation to everybody who came today.
Thank you so
I've
much.
got a little fact sheet as well for you if you're wondering about who to contact for what.
That would be fantastic.
Okay.
So thank you, Fiona.
Thank you.
And I hope your next meeting goes well.
Thank you very much.
I'm
I
now,
will say goodbye.
thank you. So I'm now going to bring in the fantastic Paul Flaxman. And some students may actually not have met Paul before. And Paul is a member of our team who teaches on the organizational psychology MSc. And Paul and I are the placement coordinators for the department. But I'm going to let Paul tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, thanks, Paula. Just sharing my slides with you. Just a couple of minutes from me, because I'm mindful we've got Andy and Katie here, who are both currently out on placements. So I'm going to give some time for them to present to you what they're doing, and perhaps you'll have questions for them as well. But myself and Paula, we're the lead coordinators for psychology. So I just want to say a few words about what we do, what our job is in this role. So the main things we do is we look at the placements that are being offered and we just check that they are suitable for a psychology placement. And the wonderful thing about psychology is just about any placement is going to be relevant because you're likely to be working with people. So it's relatively easy to show how it can be relevant for one or more areas of psychology. So that's quite an easy part of our job. It's very rare that we would turn a placement down unless there wasn't enough support for the student. The other thing we do is we conduct a mid-placement meeting with every student out on placement. So we've met with Andy and Katie, who are going to talk to you in a moment. And it's quite an informal meeting just to check in to hear what you've been doing, help you to reflect on your learning at mid-placement. And then we help you to write final placement written reports at the end so that you can just reflect on the overall year. And one thing that I think is quite important, given some of the stuff in the chat, is we can also write references because we get to know you and how you performed on placement. So we can be a go-to person to write your reference when you're looking for a job, for example, in your third year or usually after your third year, or you're applying for a postgraduate degree. And just in the last few years, you can see some examples of where our students have been going. But it changes a little bit every year. I won't read through them all, but you can just have a quick glance down. Many of these relevant for clinical psychology, some more relevant for occupational psychology like PwC. City year is based in schools, so that might be relevant for things like educational psychology, working with children with autism, for example. We've had people in Disney working in learning and development, which is a bit more related to human resources and work psychology. Yes, so a real range. Some come to us every year, like Likewise. Paul has been doing all the Likewise reviews this year. It's a charity, and they look after local communities in London. I think we've got 5 students with various roles in Gosh and Great Ormond Street Hospital. Are very keen on city students. Just in doing the review over the years, I thought I'd just pick out a few tips really about how to approach it. But actually, Andy and Katie, who are out there doing it, they might be able to speak more realistically to this. But some of the great things we see is about being proactive. So instead of sort of sitting, waiting for stuff to happen or to be given work, you ask around, you try to get involved in things. Invariably, the first stages are quite stressful because you're getting used to being an employee. You don't know how things work. You're asked to do new tasks. So it's quite challenging, but you really become quite resilient, I find, in those first few weeks of the placement, maybe the first couple of months, and you soon get used to the team and what you have to do. A great skill for all psychologists is being willing to experience the discomfort that comes from a transition from being a student to effectively being an employee. The wonderful thing is you'll be making contributions to a host service. So it might be an NHS service, a charity, or a corporate organization. But invariably, you'll be making tangible contributions to that organization. We often find, certainly in clinical roles, that the responsibility begins to increase in the second half. So here you might be involved in observing more sessions, facilitating group interventions, conducting assessments, things like this in the second half. Sometimes happens in the first half, but usually once trust is built up, you get more responsibility. The thing that's wonderful for Paula and I to see, I think, is just the personal development occurs, particularly the level of confidence you have, perhaps once you've navigated through some challenges, realizing that you perform out there in the real world, working alongside psychologists, often comes with an increase in confidence, an increase to approach people, increased willingness to approach people, asking for support when you need it. And I think that's one of the most valuable things of the year out is this incredible increase in these skills that you'll tend to experience. That's it. I've popped my email up there, so you can email myself or Paul and or the SAS placements team. We're all closely connected.
Great.
I'm going to stop sharing and hand back to.
Thank you, Paul. You're breaking up a tiny bit, so I'm going to jump in over you. I can see there are some questions in the chat, but I'm going to, if people don't mind, I'm going to leave them just to the end because Andy and Katie have been waiting very patiently to share their experiences with us. So I'm going to go over. So Andy, if you're there, hi, how are you? Katie has asked actually if you could go first because she needs you to go first, basically.
Okay.
So welcome, Andy, and everyone. This is Andy, and I had the pleasure of doing Andy's placement review quite recently. And again, as with every review meeting, I was just blown away by the experience, but also by Andy and how he is learning on the job. So I'm going to hand over to Andy. And if you'd like to just share a little bit of your experience with us, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, sure. So I'm currently doing a placement at a company called Flaxman, which is part of a larger group called Nova Founders Capital, who are actually a private equity and venture capital firm, who are made up of companies in insurance, food and health, events, and finance. And Flaxman tends to be under this large umbrella of HR. So just in terms of Flaxman, they're a SaaS company who basically offer software as a service. And in this case, they have many tools such as talent discovery assessments, IQ tests, team reports, to basically help companies maximize employee productivity, employee engagement, as well as offering in-depth people insights into effectively recruiting the right candidate. And yeah, of course, when I applied, this was something that interested me because it also was linked to what I was doing in psychology at City. And yeah, it's been 6 months now, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And yeah, the beauty of being at a startup is the responsibility that you're given. Some of the things that I've had full responsibility include developing the website, creating the new and improved Flaxman practitioner certificate using Adobe Illustrator. I've also been at the forefront of the recruitment and marketing departments using Greenhouse, Campaign Monitor, SalesQL, Pipedrive, Overly, Woodpecker. So yeah, basically helping recruit new employees and keeping our clients engaged by feeding them new content. I was also heavily involved in developing the new IQ test that we just released by creating its rules and the scoring system, in which I talked to developers about how we were going to implement that. So yeah, there isn't one specific role that I've had at Flaxman. It's been a little bit everywhere, which I had, of course, a lot to do and a lot of responsibility. And this is something that I've enjoyed a lot. So yeah, and of course the culture here is very goal-oriented, so targeted and being driven. And of course, I'm working about 60 hours a week. So that's 12 hours every day, 5 times a week. And it's for some people, it's a lot of it. For me, it was something that I was willing to sacrifice, my social life, everything like that, for the opportunity, for the experience, and for the skills. And yeah, it's been immense so far. You're muted, Paula.
I could have been talking to myself there for a while. Thank you, Andy. I do think, Andy, you're actually working quite long hours. I wouldn't always recommend that, but you're actually been really, I was really struck by how you've been welcomed into the organization and how you've been sort of, in a way, treated immediately like one of the gang and one of the employees rather than a placement student. So I could really feel that from the placement review. What, in terms of personal development, Andy, could you just share maybe a tiny little bit about where you feel you've experienced personal development that will sort of carry forward in terms of your future career path?
Yeah, so in terms of personal development, I've obviously developed some significant skills at quite a large scale. So, for example, leadership. I've had a platform of accountability for everything that I've done. Without having someone look over my shoulder, it's something that is at the start was something that I wasn't used to, but I've definitely grown into that role and I've become a lot more mature. And obviously, becoming a leader, managing groups of people, managing tasks that are of high priority has definitely increased my leadership skills. Also creative problem solving skills as well. So, being at a startup, it's always quite chaotic and hectic. So there's always something that goes wrong. Just last week we had a problem with the website, and I stayed till 1 a.m. just trying to fix it, looking for solutions and trying to get that back up and running, because the website is obviously the main hub of where everything goes for the first time. And also communication, everyone sits together. So we're always talking how we can develop certain projects, how we can move forward, what we're going to do next, what's already been done. So I've developed, many skills for communication, creative problem solving skills, commercial awareness, leadership, planning and organization, teamwork. There's a lot of skills that I've developed, and been great.
That just sounds amazing. I think in terms of thinking about future career, a lot of those skills that you've just mentioned are so important. One particularly being teamwork. A lot of the work that a psychologist or somebody with a psychology degree will do if you're working with people is you will actually be on teams, and you kind of have to learn those interpersonal skills. We have a lovely question here from the audience. Andy, what do you feel like you've gained from taking this placement that you think you might have now gained as opposed to somebody who hasn't taken a placement? Obviously, you can't speak about people who haven't, but
yeah, of course.
You identify that sort of gain.
Yeah, of course. To be honest, before the placement, I obviously knew that I was going to develop certain experiences and skills, but to be honest, it's been well beyond what I thought. I've obviously developed industry-specific knowledge. Of course, in psychology or studying psychology, you learn about psychometrics, and psychometrics applies where I'm working at. For example, testing areas of motivation, attitude, and knowledge, the team reports that we produce, but also aptitude tests, so testing mental and skill orientation, to the IQ test, and also testing personality and talents, the talent discovery assessment. So in that case, I've learned industry-specific knowledge that not a lot of people studying psychology have. And obviously, I can take that with me into my last year, and obviously, I could develop or create a dissertation in that field.
Yeah.
And you learn a lot, not just about psychology, about work, but also the speaking to people, and you develop a sense of creating harmony within a company, working together, and constantly being you know, on your toes, because obviously there's a startup. So yeah, I think I've learned a lot more than I was expecting, and it's only going to get better from here.
I think, I mean, I was really, yeah, I remember on your review meeting, some of the experience you're getting is experience that Paul's students get on the masters, particularly working with psychometrics and training to learn how to work with psychometrics. So you are actually getting experience that is sort of at that master's level of studying. So that's yeah, that really kind of jumped out at me. Now we have another question here that I think is important to address, because you're alarming some of the students by the fact that you stay till 1 a.m. to fix the web page. And this student is asking, are we expected to work overtime as students on placement? Are we allowed to have boundaries? And I think the answer to that is yes. I think, Andy, you acknowledged yourself that you do tend to work a little bit more, but that's your personal choice. You've not been asked to do that.
Yeah, of course, it is. Yeah. I am contracted till 6, but I choose to stay till 9 because I choose to stay till 9 to 10. The reason why I stay till 1 is because of my own choice. I wanted to do something. I wanted to take initiative, and I wanted to be proactive instead of reactive. And that's the way I've always been. Is going above and beyond instead of, you know, simply working by the contractual hours and stuff like that. So for me, it's but if it is something that does concern you, it's always good to talk with your employer and what they expect from you. For me, I always made it clear, and so did my employer, that I was always going to do more than what was expected or was asked, because that's simply the person I am.
Yeah. Thank you, Andy. Thank you for clarifying that. Yeah, I think everyone else I met, and I'm sure Paul as well, worked within certain boundaried hours, but that is something that would be negotiated at the outset, at the beginning of the placement. It wouldn't be something. And obviously, if a placement student was struggling with that, that might be something where Paul or I would step in and support a student with that negotiation. Andy, thank you so much. If you can stick around, because there might be a few questions at the end. I'm going to invite Katie, lovely Katie, who's applauding you, would she like to join us? And Katie, I believe you might have a few slides. You should have the option to be able to share screen.
All right, let's give that a try.
And a big welcome to Katie, and thank you for being here today to share with us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
I'm going to hand over straight away to Katie. Off you go.
Well, great. So I just wanted to have a little talk about kind of what my role is on the placement and kind of my journey, how I got here. So just starting off with my role. So I'm an honorary assistant psychologist at Great Ormond Street Hospital. There's about 15 placement students who are working at GOSH in various different teams. So my team is called Psychological Medicine. So it mainly works with young people that are experiencing tics or Tourette syndrome, and then additional assessments into other neurodevelopmental needs, so ADHD, cognitive assessments, autism, things like that. So, and unlike Andy, I do have quite a structured working sort of time frame just to help ease anyone who's worried about that. So I work 4 days a week, from 9 till 5. I was able to negotiate that with my supervisor as well as with placement team, so I meet all the contracted hours, and occasionally you do stay late, but nowhere near as much as Andy. So it's definitely not expected that you're supposed to work yourself to the bone. I know people that's in my team and my supervisors are definitely very harsh on us not overworking, so it's definitely not something to worry about. So just some of my roles. I have so many, and I know Paul will know this after me talking his ear off in the mid-placement review meeting, that I really do get involved in so much, but they're mainly split between sort of admin and clinical tasks. So especially in an AP role, it is very admin heavy, but you do learn a lot of skills and information from that. So it definitely isn't a negative, it's just something to note that I wasn't entirely aware of when applying. So just some of the things I get involved with is inviting families, clinicians to our psychoeducation groups that are our team run. I do a lot of checking and chasing, scoring questionnaires, databases, measures, things like that. A lot of Zoom meetings. So my placement is sort of a hybrid. So I'm in, depending on sort of the COVID situation, once or twice a week, sometimes more, sometimes less. We get involved in some pre-assessment writing. So before a young person comes into our clinic and has an assessment with the clinicians, we can do a write-up just so the clinicians have all the notes and aware before they go into the assessment. We help to monitor and facilitate psychoeducation groups, so including what we have is our exposure and response prevention group, which is what I'm helping to run now. So it's all remote, but it's just making sure that we get in contact with all the families via the chat function. I lead an icebreaker activity with a bunch of 10 and 11-year-olds, which is always interesting. Lots of stuff. And then more of the clinical side of it is observing new patient assessments. So I get to observe at least an assessment a week, which is very lucky, which is probably more than what most people at GOSH get to do. My team is quite good like that. So it's people coming in having assessments for tics and Tourette's, as well as other sort of anxiety, depression, as well as cognitive assessments and autism. I've also recently been involved in the recruitment for a multinational like genetic study, looking at the genetics, sort of genetic link between tics and Tourette syndrome, and also a project with Star Aims, which is recruitment for a autism drug testing study. So that's been really interesting to get that research perspective, which has never particularly always been my focus, but I definitely think it's something important to have, and I've really enjoyed that. Again, just more updating things, chasing things, scoring things. And one thing that I'm probably most proud of is a personal project that I'm working on. So I'm quite lucky that my department is very set on having the students come up with their own project in the time, just so we have something sort of at the end of it to reflect on and make positive changes to the team. So mine is currently like a service user satisfaction on our remote autism assessment clinic. So we see sort of 2 to 3 patients every month and give them an autism assessment. And it's something that had to be drastically changed with the onset of COVID. It was in person and then had to be switched to remote, which meant sort of all the assessment had to be changed. So we're now collecting some feedback on that, going to run some qualitative and quantitative stats on it, and then feed that back to the team to make some changes. And then, yeah, some leaflets, PowerPoints, a lot of small edits. A lot of clinicians send you things. Please make this more sort of child-friendly, school-friendly. Make this look nice. A lot of that. These are just some of the things that came off my head at the top. But I've done so many things, I probably wouldn't be able to list them all, to be honest. But that's kind of the overview of my placement now. So a little bit about how I got here. I kind of broke it down into some stages, like a bit of a roadmap on kind of trace it to see if you can pinpoint where you are in your stage and maybe what to look out for ahead. So I thought the first stage I hit was thinking. So it's, would I like to do a placement? What would I get out of it? What even placements would I be interested in? Especially with psychology, there's such a range of placements you can sort of get involved in. I know my focus was definitely the clinical aspects. So an AP role was sort of my ideal. I did consider research assistant placements, a lot of different things. Then it was sort of learning. So it's attending events like these to learn about what a placement is, what are the next stages, what are other people's experiences. I also know when it was my turn last year, I signed up to a placement mentoring program with the city. I'm not sure if they're doing it this year or next year or anything, but that was really helpful. They pinged you up with a past placement student who could help you through the application process, looking for placements, the interview process. And I know my mentor, she was just amazing and supported me in the interview process. And that was something that I would definitely recommend if they are offering it this year. Now the next stage, which is probably arguably one of the most important points, which hasn't really been hit on, is the doing. So it's about getting out there, getting work experience, getting voluntary posts, developing those skills, learning what you want to do. It can sometimes be the most daunting part, but I think it's something that I definitely always love getting involved in. I've always loved volunteering and doing a bunch of different things. So just prior to starting my placement, these are just a few of the things that I managed and was lucky enough to get involved in. So prior to doing the placement, I had a retail job, which many of you may do. I also volunteered remotely sort of from summer 2020 with a charity called PIP, which is Pursuing Independent Paths, based in London. They work with adults with learning disabilities and supporting them with sort of education and care sessions. I did that for a year voluntary, and then they actually offered me a job. So I still do that now, but that's paid, which is definitely very nice to get paid to do something that I was previously doing for free. I also was SEND support in a specialist SEMH school for 6 months. I did that 1 day a week when I was studying. A work experience in paediatric A&E. I've always had an interest specifically in paediatric and sort of child and adolescent psychology, so that was really interesting. Again, many of you may be student ambassadors or widening participation ambassador. I've learned a lot of skills from that. That's really fun. Recently got involved with a charity called Shout. It's the text crisis line, to get another sort of edge, another experience and more skills. I also did the micro placement program. This was prior to when it was only for year 2. So I applied for it when I was in my first year, and went through the whole interview process. And that was really interesting. And I learned a lot from that. But unfortunately, I didn't actually get to do the placement because of COVID, and it got cancelled that summer. And then the final thing that I've been involved in, mainly last year, is PrEP. So it's the research sort of program with City. I'm sure you may have heard things from Andreas, or if you haven't already, you will. That's been a really interesting thing that I've managed to get involved in, and that's given me that research edge. So there's loads of things you can get involved in. It's just about being proactive, getting out there, sending the emails, scouring the internet. I know with the SEMH school, I sent emails to about 25 schools off my own back prior to September last year, just saying, is there any chance I'd be able to come in maybe a couple of times, just see what a SENCO or what a SEND support does in a school, get that kind of perspective on educational psychology. I got a lot of no's, and I got a lot of I was ignored, but I was really lucky that I did get a response from one school, and it worked out to be an SEMH school, and it was the most eye-opening experience, and I loved that. So sort of going through on the next page, the next one is the reading and the writing, which was the most tedious process. So it is reading around, looking for those placement opportunities. So I know Fiona covered them quite well earlier. I got most of mine from LinkedIn and from emails from the placement team. If you are seriously considering a placement, go on the LinkedIn page, the SAS one. It is so good. They put everything on there. Everyone's always contributing, and it's a really useful place. And then the next stage is the writing the applications, the CVs, the cover letters. Depending on how many roles you apply for, they do never end, and they can sometimes feel quite frustrating when you're constantly making edits, constantly just writing about your skills. It can feel exhausting, but when that stage is done, it is really rewarding. So the next one is the communicating part. So this is the part that I found most useful when applying for the placement. So it is booking appointments with the careers team. I know with each application I did and each cover letter I did, I booked an individual appointment, got feedback, made the edits, booked another appointment the next week. I think I probably had at least 10 appointments in the space of a couple of months, and I'm sure that the careers team were probably sick of me popping up booking appointments, but it was so useful to have everything refined to a point that I was really happy with it, and I felt like I had done the best work that I could have done and set myself up the best opportunity. So not saying you have to harass the careers team, but even if you book just one appointment to review it, it really will be very helpful. It's the best advice I could give you. Again, if you can have other meetings with your tutor or a member of the placement team, or I know I had it with my mentor, really useful experience. They bring up things that maybe you wouldn't necessarily have thought of. You get a different perspective on things, you get feedback, really, really good. Definitely wouldn't skip on that stage. And then the most scary part for me, I think, was the interview stage. Again, I did some mock interviews with my placement mentor, which I think were really good. She helped me prepare and do interview questions, which I didn't even think of, scenario questions. So if you could do some prep on that, really, really helpful. So when I applied, I applied for 3 positions. It was 2 AP roles and 1 research assistant role. I got interviews for the 2 AP roles, and I actually had the interviews on the same day, which I wouldn't recommend if you have a choice, but we go through what we can. And I ended up getting this one, so I didn't get the other AP role, but I got the role at Gosh. And I think a lot of that was the help through the interviewing and sort of the preparation. And this was the role that I wanted more. I'm interested more in sort of child and adolescent psychology. I love the name, I love the role more, and I think I really came across in an interview versus the other interview that I had. I think that passion just didn't come across. So that's also something to note when you go through that. And then the final stage is preparing. So if you've gone through all the hard work, you've done the interviews and you've managed to secure yourself a placement, give yourself a big congratulations. It is a really hard process. But then you need to start thinking about, I know with my placement, there was a variety of teams. So we had the choice to come up with a priority list of the teams we want to work in, and they tried to place us in sort of one of the top 3. I'm lucky that the team I'm in was my top choice. And I know most of the other people, I think it's maybe only other one student that wasn't placed in their top 3. So that's an important decision you have to make if you are given that choice. And it's also about the sort of balance that you want to do with your life in that time. So a year or 9 months is mine. It can be a really long time, especially if you're doing something unpaid like mine is. I had to debate, you know, how I was going to manage it financially doing it unpaid, if I was going to keep on my part-time job, I have 2 now, but keep those on, other voluntary sort of responsibilities, and also my social life and my sort of like downtime. It was something that I really had to think about and have conversations about. And through being proactive, talking to my supervisor, going down to a 4-day week, it now means that I can work 2 other days paid. So I work a 6-day week, but it's a lot more feasible for me than it would be if I did a 5-day week on placement. So just get out there, have a think about these things. I've done some tips, but I think I've covered them a lot really. So it's just being proactive, send emails, have a look and do things that other people aren't doing. It will give you the edge. Don't be disheartened if you get a no. It always means it's opening up another door to a yes, and just trying your best to learn from all of those. Be open to new opportunities. You know, you might find something that you didn't initially sort of think you wanted, and you end up really liking it. And also just be informed. So to look at the job descriptions of sort of the roles, look at the company, think about the interview questions, really nitpick it. But yeah, just be informed on everything. So that's kind of a speed run through how I sort of got here. I've just popped in there. If you did have any questions, you'd probably find me. I've messaged a lot on the LinkedIn page, all my city emails there. Feel free to send me a message, and I'll be happy to talk your ear off about my placement or give you any advice.
Wow, Katie, wow. Can we all give Katie an enormous big high five or a clap or whatever you want to? That was phenomenal, Katie. Thank you so much, and so detailed. And I think the one thing that's standing out for me from both Andy and Katie's talks is that you are both very proactive people, and you're both sort of very determined to get the placements, but also to get the most out of your placements. And I think this is something, it can take a bit of confidence, can't it? Because some students are maybe a bit afraid to push or a bit afraid to put themselves forward. And Katie, I noted that you said you at one point sent out like 25 queries about a SEN role, and sometimes you just have to keep sending them out, but not being afraid that unfortunately people will ignore you. This is just the way of the world, but also not being afraid to send them, because if you don't ask, the door won't open. And students often email me and ask me, you know, what should I do? And the first thing you have to do is be courageous, I think. And I always say you can ask for anything if you ask nicely. And you have to be prepared that people can say yes or no, or there may be a negotiation. So that really jumped out at me. You're both very determined, proactive young people. So that's really nice to see. And I hope that's inspirational to other students. Now, just a few questions I wanted to pick up as we go. There was one, I think it came to me, but just asking about someone not sure what placement that might be interesting for them. Now that's, I think actually that's something to think about. I mean, it's not, Paul and I don't help students with sitting down and picking through placements and finding what might be interesting. That's not our role as placement coordinators. But I don't think it's the role of the careers team either. I think, and maybe Katie and Andy might want to comment on this. I think when you're starting out and you're an undergraduate, you're not always going to get something that's your dream job, but also you might not know what your dream job is just yet. I think every work experience adds something to the CV and to your personal development. So I just wonder if Andy or Katie, if either of you would just like to comment on maybe that not every aspect of your job would be the dream job, but that it's still part of growth and development and learning those skills.
Yeah, of course. I think you're going to find that anywhere. I think in any aspect of any job, you're going to find something that you might not enjoy.
Yeah.
Ultimately, in the long run, you'll probably find out that it is good for you because you have that experience and you have that skill. And just in terms of finding a placement that is interesting, the way that I done it was simply just clicking on LinkedIn. So in 12-month placement or internship and looking and kind of reading the description of the role, looking at the company, and if it was something that I found interesting, I would say, and in the end, I would apply to them. That's the way I done it, instead of like having, oh, this interests me and I'm going to do that. Kind of just being open about it and looking at what other companies or what other roles there are out there.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the other thing to remember is not to put your eggs in the one basket, because you might see the dream job, but that doesn't mean the dream job will have a placement for you. So I think, and Katie, did you just want to say anything sort of briefly about that as well? That kind of choosing the placement or the placement choosing you?
Yeah, I think definitely don't put your eggs in one basket. I also think there is this pressure on to find a placement that, you know, is the job, your dream job, what you want to do forever. And that's not always, you know, what you're going to do or the best thing. I know my mentor, she did a 1 year's AP role, realized she did not like clinical psychology at all. And then moved on to a master's in, I think it was economic psychology, or sort of that, a complete sort of switch. So it can be a really useful experience anyway. So just to have a look at what the placements are available, and if anything interests you, then look into it, send an application, and then you can go from there. I try not to have that pressure on yourself. It's not going to benefit you in any way.
I agree. Thank you so much, both of you. I think I keep an open mind, be determined, but also be prepared that, you know, it may not be the idea. But I've also had a few reviews with students this year who told me the one thing they've learned is this is not what they want to do, but they're still enjoying it and they're still benefiting from it. But they realize that in the future, this may not be the path they want to go down. And I think that's still very valuable to know that at this stage of a degree. Now, I think Anna has been asking about research assistant roles. And Katie, you mentioned this, and I just want to tell students about it. So Andreas Capes has his prep projects that he advertises for every year. So, and this is an opportunity within our department to be buddied up with a mentor, which is one of the academics in the department, to actually work on a project with them. Now, there is an application process for it, but if you want to find out more about the prep projects, can you please get in touch with Andreas? It is his baby, and I'm sure he loves to talk about it. But I would also take on board what Katie and Andy are sharing as well, and particularly Katie's chutzpah for just turning up all the sessions she could manage to book with the careers team. I mean, the team are there to support students. The careers team are there to help with these skills. So don't be afraid to reach out and avail of everything that's available from the careers team. It's always good to get somebody to look at your CV, even if you think it's beautiful. It's always good to get a second opinion. There's always something we can learn. There's always something we can tweak. Paul, would you like to, we're coming near the end, but is there anything you'd like to share or reflect or say?
Just one, I think, question probably best for Katie is, do you remember what sorts of questions they asked you in the interview?
So I'm trying to think back, because it was in sort of the December when I was applying my second year. I think it was split from knowledge into more skills-based questions. So it was, can you tell me a time you demonstrated this skill? Or What could you bring to the team? What are your strengths, weaknesses, sort of those more standard questions. And then the scenario questions. So it was, what would you do in this situation? I'm trying to think of one specifically. I think there was one, it wasn't with this placement, but it was when I was applying officially for the role that I do with the adults with learning disabilities. And it was a scenario question that was like, oh, we're doing a cooking class and an adult is having a bit of a meltdown and he's having a knife, what would you do? Although that's not a question you can particularly prepare for, just to know that, kind of be setting your skills, setting, you know, what you would do, and approach that in a logical way. Trying to think of some more questions. But yeah, it was quite helpful to pick out some of the key skills that we'll put in the sort of the application advert, and pick them out and use the STAR technique to sort of situation, task, action, response, or result, and sort of plan those out. So when they did ask me a question on a specific skill, I had it in the back of my mind, or I had it on the cue card that was stuck on the window when I was doing a Zoom interview. Just preparing like that.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, thanks.
I was just going to say, Paul, if any students here are not familiar with the STAR method, do get in touch with the careers team about that. It's something that they actually really advocate for students to learn how, when you're answering a question, that you give a sort of developed answer rather than a kind of very brief, short answer. And a few years ago, I was helping out with the micro placement interviews at City. When students were applying for the microplacements. And one thing I did note was that students don't always know how to, some students didn't know how to sell themselves. And the other thing I noticed, which as a supporter of the voluntary sector really made me cry into my tea, students often played down voluntary work. And if they were giving an example, they would say, but it doesn't really count, it's only voluntary work. And I really would urge students not to do that. A voluntary role is still work experience. The fact that you don't get paid is by the by. I think it's about looking at the skills and being able to sell them in the interview. Andy, did you have an interview process when you went for this placement?
Yeah, so it started off with an online interview, then an interview in person. Yeah. A case study in person, and then after that they will kind of decide what we're looking for.
And did you feel you did any special preparation for that, or?
Yeah, of course. I like similar to a case, I had pieces of paper of what I was going to say, or how I would introduce myself and stuff like that. But otherwise, you know, I'm very confident in my abilities and expressing that. So I didn't have a problem when it came to the interview. Yeah, in terms of the actual case study, yeah, there's a lot of preparation that I put into it, because obviously if you show your employer that you're prepared, I think you're going to impress them, and that's what happened.
Yeah, thank you. And I think one tip really that's, I mean, is standard really for me. If you're going to apply to an organization, I think the first thing you do before you go for an interview, well, one of the first things you do is you actually Google them and find out something about them. The last thing you want is that you would be asked a question about the organization and you have a blank sort of, I'm not really sure why I'm here. So there are certain things, there's things you can't control for, and I'm sure every employer likes to throw a curveball just to see how you will cope. But there are things you can prepare for, and one thing, you know, that's easy to prepare for is finding out exactly what the organization do, what are their values, and you often find a lot of that information on the website. So that is something. But
just quickly, I think it also comes with experience as well, because I remember doing I've done the micro placement program, and I had an interview with a company, and I was expecting them to only ask about me, and so I didn't really kind of prepare about the company, but more about myself. And obviously, when they were asking about the company, did you look at the blog, stuff like that, the website? You know, I was a bit like, you know, I wasn't totally sure, and I think with that, obviously at the end, I asked them a few questions about how can I improve, because I knew the interview didn't go so well, and I asked him, you know, if a future reference happened, I could do a lot better, and I think that helped a lot. And just preparing about some questions you might that might come up and stuff like that. So I think with experience that helps as well.
Good. It's good though that you actually asked that question, you know, what advice, and again, it takes confidence to do that, but you can actually get feedback from an interview. I mean, again, there's always a chance somebody will say I'm too busy, but most employers are friendly and they want to help you. So again, if you have an interview, like Andy said, and you're not sure it went great, but you can ask for feedback in the interview, or you can email afterwards and ask for feedback. And the worst that happens is you get ignored. The best that happens is you have something useful and constructive. So I'm really mindful of the time. I'm going to say thank you to a huge thank you to Andy and Katie for the amazing presentations and for sharing this experience with us. And thank you to everyone for coming to the talk. Fiona will share the slides with us. So somebody was asking, but I see, thank you, Paul, you've put the email address in the chat as well. So for anyone who wants to get in touch, it's sas.placements@city.ac.uk. But please remember, Paul and I are placement coordinators. So we sort of work with students who are out on placement. If your questions are predominantly about CVs and interviews, I would advise you to contact the careers team, or also the career consultant, Antonia Clark, who you all hopefully have met at some point since you started at City. But we can pass on her details as well. And I have to say, Antonia is just amazing and fantastic and very supportive as well. So a huge thank you to everyone. But should we give one last big woohoo for Katie and Andy? And then it's tea time.
Yes.
Woohoo! I think it's tea time. We've all earned a nice cup of tea and